Hey guys, Dean Sweetman here, along with Frank Barry. Hey buddy, how you doing?
Hey, doing well, doing well. Good to see everybody.
Yep, we're surviving the cold here in Los Angeles at 43 degrees. But anywho, we got a great show coming up, and I'm pretty excited to talk to Neil Smith in a moment from Dunham and Company.
Yes, Nils is with
Got
us
lots of
already.
experience around ministry and giving and the whole nine yards.
Absolutely. Nils is actually on screen with us already. He was very prompt.
Hey Nils,
Hey guys, it's good to be on with you guys.
welcome, man.
All the way from New York City, we hear.
Yeah,
Yep, in the cold here in New York City, and I appreciate you guys letting me follow my boss, Rick Dunham.
That's right.
yeah,
He was on just a couple weeks ago. That's right.
yeah. He was great, man. You got a lot to live up to there. He was a smart guy.
He's the best. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, like he's got all the data, right? Like he's a wealth of knowledge around giving and generosity data for churches. So
I think when he was birthed, he just started doing research on day one of life in different ways. He loves research and data and just soaks it in.
Yep, totally. I know we could keep talking forever. And he's also involved in all that other like just industry reporting stuff, like, I forget the names of the organization, but the big research project that he's involved with too. So
Giving Institute.
yeah, the Giving Institute. That's right.
Cool beans. All right. So before we get into, we're going to talk just around some really practical things around building giving into the worship service. But maybe just a little intro, Niels, a little bit about yourself, your history. I know you've been in ministry and you worked for Dunham for a while. So yeah, give us the 2-minute drill on Neil Smith.
Yeah, so my role at Dunham Company is Chief Strategist of Social Media and Innovation, and what Rick Dunham will tell you is that it's my job to run ahead of our clients. So looking at social media, podcasting, live streaming, even things like cryptocurrency. What are some things that might be coming or might not be coming to advise our clients? So that's what I do at Dunham Company. Before joining Dunham Company, I was in full-time ministry for about 14 years. Started as a youth pastor and then started doing online ministry. So I was at Community Bible Church, was my last church role. I was their innovation pastor, and I was hired to launch onlinechurch.com. We took our physical church online and doing our church services, and then it was my role to oversee everything on the internet. So that was our church website, it was our mobile app, it was our donation platform, it was a database system. So all of those technologies and how they all integrated into our communication system. So that's a little bit about my background and what I'm doing today with Dunham Company.
And I need to know, as just a random side note, how many innovation pastors there are in America, just because it's got to be the coolest pastoral title on the planet.
I felt like it was my primary job to imitate Bobby Greenwald in every way. So Bobby Greenwald at Life Church. So I imitated him to the point of even copying his title. I think there are maybe half a dozen. At the same time, Kenny Jang, who's a good friend of mine, who's at Liquid Church. He was there.
Kenny.
And so, those guys. But there's not many. Now, they gave me that title. I kind of had word, like many pastors, I was the online / young adult / website, is kind of, it's just me, the / pastor innovation gave it a cooler, funner title that made me happier, I think. So it's more the initiative of vagueness was our core goal, and I oversaw multi-site at the same time. So it was all kind of those multiple hats and lots of fun. Yeah.
We had Kenny on the show a few weeks back as well. We'll have to get Bobby on the show just to round it out, and we'll have all the innovation pastors that started it,
Bobby's a great guy.
Awesome, man. So we're talking about some trends that are changing in the whole giving space, and some real practical ways that you can increase giving during the worship experience. So I know that's in your wheelhouse, and that is right in our wheelhouse too. So we're pretty pumped for today.
Yeah. And you run a podcast, right, on social media for churches? You've been up to that for a while?
Yeah, so for about probably 3.5 years, 4 years now, I've hosted the Social Media Church podcast. It was founded by DJ Chuang, primarily starting the conversation around online church, and we've expanded it to talk about general social media trends and how churches can use social media and the internet to accomplish their goals. So it's been fun to be a part of the conversation for a while.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I guess we'll just jump into it. So instead of going right into the innovation side of things, or maybe some innovation is involved here too, but a big part of what churches want to accomplish is actually getting people into the building. So physical, relationships and connections. So can you speak a little bit about that, kind of like what are churches doing? What are one or two things churches are doing on the innovation side today that are getting more people in the building?
I think when you think about just content in general, of the church is investing so much in just what a pastor every Sunday is creating 30 minutes or an hour worth of content in a sermon. And so how churches are using that content to take the video and put it on YouTube, or take the audio and put it in Apple Podcasts. And so what we see, and really working well, is that you don't have to wait until somebody walks into your door to minister to them. The internet now allows us, through social media, to take content, and you can use micro pieces of that sermon and upload that to Facebook. And what that also allows your congregation to do is it gives them an evangelism tool to then share that to their Facebook community, or share that privately with their friends. So at the end of the day, what I see working most effectively is churches that are prioritizing creating online content, primarily video, resourcing their congregation to then allow the viral effect of social media to then share that out, and using that in an engaging way. And then even we're Dunman Company, where we've come alongside some churches in some interesting ways, is using that advertising. So using YouTube ads, Facebook ads, to take that content and bring it directly to people, to get it further, faster, with the power of these advertising engines that are really so inexpensive when you compare it to historical TV and radio ads. And we actually do both. We'll do TV and radio ads simultaneously with a YouTube and a Facebook campaign, and those two can often work together really, really nicely.
Yeah. Well, I guess I have two kind of follow-up questions. Like, how are churches using those different media creatively and kind of tracking that it's driving? And I know building the online attendance is important, but tracking that it's also bringing people in the doors, and maybe who's doing it well. Do you have any good examples that people could go follow and look at?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is often a challenge, and it's easier today to track engagement with the content, where in TV and radio ads or newspaper ads, you never knew. You just trusted what the newspaper told you, how many people saw that newspaper. And so what we've historically done is just said, well, how many people got here because you saw a newspaper ad? How many got here because you saw a television commercial? And I think the reality is, probably when it still comes to tracking physical attendance related to online engagement, a lot of churches are using a plan your visit type of tool. And so they can use a tool like that to basically click this button on our website, plan your visit. We get an email address. We can follow up with you, after your visit, to see how it went. And so churches that are using both those tools in their database systems to be very proactive, from an ad that tracks to the website, which tracks your plan your visit, to people coming, are very forward thinking. I don't know that I could tell you an example of one that's doing it. I think about my friends at CCV in Southern California, are doing a pretty good job with that. Are the first church that comes to mind. But it's that for the most part, people are still doing it the same way they used to. They're just using the more efficient means of social media to build awareness, and then counting the effectiveness based on how many people at membership first heard about us on social media, how many people first did Google search, or in their first time visit card, if they have a follow-up card, how did you find out about us? So I think it kind of goes together. What I still believe from the data I'm hearing from churches is that the number one reason people still come to your church is somebody invited them, but you're making it easier for people to invite people when you're giving them content to share, to basically It's like if you have a friend and you invite them to a restaurant with you, and if you can give them a menu before they come, does that make sense? Or you got to taste this cookie from this restaurant. Let's go get the whole meal later. And it's almost like you give them a taste of it. Like, this isn't going to be weird, this isn't going to be awkward. This is our church in a micro tasting, so that you can come experience the full thing.
Yeah. So good.
Love it. Mate, let's talk attendance and how that affects giving. I know there's research out there. I know you, Giving USA did a report on, people are more likely to give if they're attending as opposed to, less attendance or even just online. What's the case? What's the connection between attendance and giving?
Well, I think you know, it's interesting you ask that question. I mean, Rick really dives into the depth of those numbers, but I think the reality is you see the more engaged people are with your church, and we see this with all nonprofits. The more engaged they are with your nonprofit, the more they're likely to give, and that will vary. Obviously, sometimes that varies by their capacity to give, but we see this with churches. The more somebody attends, the more they're likely giving, and as pastors, we like to assume sometimes that, well, everyone's just going to give 10%, you know, because that's just what they're going to do. And the reality is the data says the average church giver is giving somewhere like 2.9% of their income, or somewhere in there. So everyone attending is giving 10%. And I think what ministry leaders often need to focus on is how do we drive people to their deepest level of engagement, and also understanding that 100% attendance isn't realistic today.
Right.
And this is where I think online can really come alongside of,
right.
While they can't attend, let's make sure that they have the media that they can stay connected to the sermon, or that they can better stay connected to their small group, even when they're not able to attend on a week to week basis. And so I don't know that I have specific data as to this is.
No, that's good. I mean,
but we know a depth of engagement deepens of giving.
Definitely. So what's your experience with, I'm actually trying to convince my son, I go to my son's church here in LA, and I'm trying to convince him to get an online kind of, you know, they're producing a 2-camera shoot, and their production value's going up. But I'm like, and there's free software, you know, from Life Church and other places to do it well. Yeah. What's the conversion rate are you seeing from like even from a snippet or a full online, you know, presentation of the church as a campus? What do you see as people drifting from that into attendance?
I would say what I continue to hear from pastors, it's I'm 2.5 years from being in the church, you know, living on a day-to-day basis. So I'm sitting in a consulting seat now, so I'm asking more people than I'm actually living in it. Yeah. And what I continue to hear from those pastors is that the percentage of people when they're asked or when they're prodded in some way of did you experience our sermon or any media from our church before you came? Right. And I would say it's at least 90% have experienced some form of media from that church before they attend that church. So whether that's they song from their worship band on YouTube, they watch, I mean, typically I watch some kind of sermon clip, or I went to your website, you know, and it's, the reality is this is a behavior outside of just church.
Right.
I don't remember the last time I went to a restaurant that I hadn't been to before that I didn't go look at the menu on their website or Yelp before I went. It's our behavior. We go online to check something out to see if it's going to be worth our time and energy. Right. And then the more you can give them to experience that, I think the more likely they're going to receive it, especially if you have a good experience. And if you've got a bad experience, it's not going to be worth them coming because they're not going to come back. So you want to put your best foot forward, though, on your website. It's in many ways your new lobby. You know, so you got your sign. You want to have a good sign. You want to have a lobby when they walk in, and you create that whole experience. So your web presence across Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, your website, it's all a path that's a part of that experience that you got to bring in. I would say though, every church needs to be thinking, how can we better our website? How can we better our media? You know, how can we go from 2 cameras to 3 cameras, or go from 1080p to 4K? But I think too often we say, I'm going to wait till I'm at 4K before I even put video out. And they get some stuff out there, and in moments you start thinking how you're going to make the next one better, and just continue to get better. But don't wait till you've got it perfect so you start pushing stuff out there.
Right. I mean, that's like those of us that are in the software business, entrepreneurs, you know, it's like you can wait to have a perfect app and wait to have perfect software. But meanwhile, your 7 competitors have come in and started gobbling up market share, and you come with perfection and you're 2 years behind because you didn't get in the market.
That's right. And then you're far from perfection because you're 2 years behind.
Exactly.
And it's just the way you have to constantly iterate and constantly improve and constantly look better. And it's frustrating. I you know, as a consultant, I will have pastors tell me, we did what you said, and it's not working. I'm like, well, I said that a year ago, you know, and you just now adopted it.
Right.
And, you know, Facebook Live is a good tool, for, you know, in a lot of ways, but it was a whole lot better of a tool a year ago when I told you about it than when you came to adopt it. And so we have to constantly adapt to these changes on these platforms. And you know that in the world of mobile apps, of Apple's changing their rules. You know, Android systems
all the time.
Our mobile devices are getting better. They're getting faster.
Mm-hmm.
We have to adapt to those things. And at the end of the day, they're changing most of the time in better ways.
Yeah.
And so it pushes us outside of our comfort zones, but it creates new opportunities every day.
Can I throw one in real quick? Because it's like, just get started, just do something, like all these things. And oftentimes I think the big churches can do that because they're staffed for it. They're thinking about it. They're forward thinking. They have innovation pastors, right? But it's usually the average 200 member church, right, or smaller, that struggles with this kind of stuff. So I guess related to that particular question Dean asked, like, how do you help smaller churches? Even if you may not consult with them, like, how have you seen them do some of this stuff and do it well? Like leveraging technology, online, social, to sort of drive engagement.
Yeah, I think it's way harder, in my opinion, for a bigger church. When I made a change to our website, we had 18,000 people that visited our website every day. I was moving a lot of people's cheese when I changed that website. Then when you have 8 people visiting your website and maybe a couple of people get upset, or you change your database systems, or you make a change in any of your technology systems, people get used to certain things. So it is, from my perspective, it's way harder for a big church to go after something new, because you've got to think of who that might affect, especially if it's a change rather than something new, a new initiative. So from my perspective, every church has somebody with one of these,
Yeah.
And that's a great camera.
Yeah.
Splice is a great video editing app. It's free. I mean, there's a lot of other things out there. I heard about another tool today that's like $20 a month. I can create those fancy memes like Elevation Church, and you can look real cool. And it's $20, and I guarantee you there's a 14-year-old in your church that can do that
all day.
And so there are opportunities at every church, every size. And this has changed the game of everything.
Yeah.
When we started onlinechurch.com, it was right at the beginning of iPhones, and it was 90% of the people that viewed our sermons was on a website. I mean, this world is changing, but the opportunities, and I think the opportunities for those smaller churches is where it's really becoming more and more realistic to innovate and innovate quickly and not feel like I can never keep up with Elevation Church. What you can't keep up with probably is the budget of advertising spend, or maybe a certain number of video editors. But I think if you've got good content, and I say good content, if you've got a good communicator, preacher, that's really all you need to get going.
Yep. Awesome. Totally love it.
So good. I think there was one in here about the change taking place that we wanted to talk about, Dean.
Yeah, just the shift taking place in what's going on as far as people attending worship services. Just some practical advice on some of the things, like I think you've touched on this online first strategy, where that's a gateway now, rather than the old days you put a sign up, right, or you'd have one of those funky church signs and say goofy things to people driving by.
Those still exist though, and there's some of the best pictures on the internet.
No, there's a website, I can't remember, that has like classic church signs, and it's like hilarious. It's an hour worth of laughing.
It's so good.
Yeah, but obviously a mobile, a digital first presentation. I think what you keep coming back on, and for so many pastors that we deal with, which is the whole gamut, you can see them, they're just grinding with it, because everything's been done the same way for 100 years. Mm-hmm. And you're saying, get your iPhone out, preferably an iPhone 10, put it on a little tripod, stick an external mic on it, and you're almost in business right there.
Yeah. Well, and I think my dad is the pastor of a Methodist church in outside of Houston, Texas, and he I got him, and I just pulled this out of my drawer. I got him one of these. It's a little tripod. It cost me about $10 on Amazon, and he literally sets that up, and he is live streaming his church from the front row.
So good.
I'm trying to think of the name of it. Old River Terrace United Methodist Church in Channelview, Texas, and there's 60 people that are attending that church. And you know what? There's about 20 people that are streaming in. And when somebody says, it's not as good as live church's production, but it's everything those people that can't be there. That's
a 25% jump in attendance.
It is. At the end of the day, but what's happening, and this is across the board. Jay Cranda was one of my good friends. He's at Saddleback Church. He did a study of 100 online churches, on the churches that do online ministry, and said, how many of you have seen a decrease in physical attendance because of online church? And I think what a lot of pastors said, this fear factor of when we go online, people are going to start skipping church. And it was one of those 100 said they had a decline. Right. Now, that one had a decline for other reasons that did not involve the online campus.
Right.
The internet is a front door. It is not a back door. And it's a way actually to create deeper engagement. So those people that can't be, we've got 2 young kids. There are lots of, I used to always judge people when I was a pastor of like, you're lazy, not getting to church every Sunday. Like there's a spiritual issue with you to be here. But the reality is, boy, a 6-year-old can make it so challenging to get to church some weeks. In New York City, the weather, there's a snow blizzard, and it's brutal. There's good reasons not to physically go this Sunday, and it doesn't mean I'm less committed or less engaged.
Right.
We just weren't physically able to get there this Sunday, and so I think I've come to see life on the other side of not being a pastor and being a church attendee. But at the end of the day, the internet helps us create a new front door. It helps us create evangelism opportunity. It's a discipleship opportunity. More people are engaged through Facebook groups. There are unique fellowship. You think about the community that's happening between Sundays on social media or digital communication. The internet's creating new opportunities. It is not, from my perspective, it's when we don't prioritize how we use it strategically. When we use it strategically, it is helping us further accomplish our goals. But I think what we see too many, and it's happening less and less. But I remember I wrote my book, Social Media Guide for Ministry, my first book. It was like 7 years ago, and I felt like I then had most pastors. I got like hate emails. Why would you do this? Like I remember getting one email saying, "Why do you want people to have affairs?" And I was like, I don't remember that being in my book. People had perceived, because somebody had an affair that was, they used Facebook. Right. So they just correlate the two, that the internet is the devil. Technology is the devil. It is not the devil. It's a resource the devil uses.
That's leading out of fear. I mean, we get the same thing. It's like, oh, you're making it easy for people to give, and they don't have to be in church anymore, and that's evil. I'm like, what are you talking about? Giving goes up, dude.
Yes.
Yeah, people get scared of the unknown.
It goes back to theology or even this ecclesiology of church being a building that you go to. Right. And at the end of the day, I believe, and I ran onlinechurch.com, but I believe that the most healthy spiritual community happens face-to-face, flesh to flesh.
Of course.
But I believe the internet augments that in a really powerful way. And there are some, but it's an outlier that aren't going to engage and only are going to engage digitally. But for the most part, it's an augmented aspect that's going to further your ministry goals in just about every single way.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, can we, because I guess we could keep talking about that actual thing right there for the rest of the show, but maybe to touch on another topic. So when you're using digital well and it's bringing people around so that, it is actually creating more face-to-face connections and things like that over time, what are some of the maybe digital things you're seeing people do in church? Right? Like maybe newer things, innovative things. It could be around content creation. It could be around how they're using their space and using digital in their lobbies and other kind of shared spaces. Like, are you seeing anything cool happening there?
I think that the trend that I have seen over the last 2 or 3 years, more significant, is the integration of SMS communication into a lot of calls to action. And so understand sometimes SMS, especially for those that don't have a mobile app yet. So at Community Bible Church, we were very focused on our mobile app being our community for members, and our website basically being our brochure for attenders. And so we were constantly looking at how can we use this mobile app for kids check-in, or how can we use this mobile app for a map around the campus. So really understanding how those utilities can function within the experience. But I would say probably the most consistent trend that I've seen around new technology engagement in church services and on church campuses is around SMS, of even just seeing posters on campuses of, if you're interested in this event at Hillsong, it's 99,000. That's our code, and so everything is baptism to 99,000. Everything is next steps to 99,000. And so how that technology is being integrated, which is at the end of it is pretty simple technology. Yeah. It's interesting where it doesn't have to be rocket science.
Shameless plug. Watch this space. Watch the Tithely website. You never know what's coming here in the next month.
That's awesome.
I think, text messaging, SMS is like, it's so simple, but so powerful. I mean, even the other day, like my kids, they just started playing rookies baseball, and I'm one of the assistant coaches. The head coach is like, there's some software that lets him communicate with the whole team and put out schedules and all this kind of stuff. And I said, ditch the software and start a WhatsApp group or an SMS group. That's all we need. Because I don't want to go check my email or look at this other thing. I just want you to text me, please. Right? I mean, that's how like simple yet powerful SMS is. And I think watching churches use it effectively is pretty cool.
The other thing that is interesting to me that I feel like I'm just now seeing more, and I pay more attention to it now that I have kids, is kids checking information, or at the end of the day, how they alert parents. When our kids were babies, we were alerted because they put a big flashing sign on the screens that would say, go to this. Well, there was one person in a room of 3,500 there at Community Bible Church that needed to see that announcement. They had to put it up. That was our system. But it was so distracting for every single person in the room when we all have an announcement system in our pocket. And so now at Hillsong, when there's an announcement, they text message that family first, and they get the announcement. And then the last minute resort is they put it on the screen. And so I think
how bad you feel when in front of thousands of people, you're the parent that has to get up?
Because everybody sees it. Everybody sees who stands up and walks.
I used to get up every week.
Yes.
Frank Berry, please come get your kids. They are being disruptive. Get them out of here.
Yeah. And I would say the last thing that I have not seen a lot of, but I expect to see more of, and I don't know that I've seen this from the church, but churches that are using the mobile apps and like push notifications of once you come onto campus, kind of alerting. I think people have perceived that's creepy technology. But I think in reality, we're all getting used to having creepy technology around us all the time with Alexa and all the other things. And so by being more intentional to use the technology to its limits, creates a better on-campus church experience. So there's some just interesting technology trends, but I don't know. And then you see things like 4K video and some, high definition video that's enhancing, but some of it is just being it's less about technology innovation, more about just smart uses of technology and maybe behind the scenes data. No, that's not maybe in the weekend experiences, but how churches are beginning to use data and getting smarter with data. That's the big deal. That's the trend I expect to see over the next 5 years is some real powerful data.
I mean, one of the things we think about now that we're in the church management space, we're thinking about text messaging. We obviously do church apps. We're like, every church tracks attendance or would like to track attendance effectively. And so what if just when people walked onto campus, this thing tracked your attendance?
Yes.
And so there was no more counting. There was no more using all these ancillary ways to know if somebody was there. It just now that is a bit creepy, and people, there's going to be a debate about all that kind of stuff. But certainly from the church administration side, just automatically tracking people's attendance because they walked on campus with their phone would be pretty cool.
And I think as you take that a step further and begin thinking about, okay, this person was consistent and we know they came on average twice a month, and then we see an 8-week gap, and your kind of AI systems in the background can almost then alert anybody who has these trends and moves to this trend, we follow up. Or, just how can you really monitor data trends to then be able to communicate in a very personalized way to an individual, rather than like, I need to go look for this. I need to go find what did John Smith do. But and I think those opportunities really open up for larger churches that don't necessarily know every individual that's there and notice it. But I think it can happen in the smaller churches as well, that you might not even realize it, and your data will sometimes tell you something that you didn't otherwise notice or know. So fascinating opportunities around data moving forward. Big opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just so mind blowing for people to try and get their heads around this, you know. And I was always a little bit of a, you know, pretty progressive as far as technology goes, and like the giving app, right? Back in 2012 when the App Store happened, I'm like, oh, this is a no-brainer, give them with your phone. But fast forward like 7 years, we have hundreds and hundreds of churches a month just still getting it now. So it's a journey, right?
Yep.
So many church leaders kind of wrongly assume everyone in the church knows what's going on. That's one of the brutal things about being a pastor. You think you can make one announcement and, oh, we're good now. Well, guess what? Probably a quarter to a third of your church isn't there, number one. So you got to do it at least 2 weeks in a row. And then you have some, you know, weather affected or the Super Bowl or some other reason for people not to be there. So, but people, and then you've got people not paying attention. They're just tuning out, right? So they're not there and they're not listening. How does the church connect the work of the church to people in the pew?
Yeah. There's a lot of, I mean, it's good communication. You know, part of that is being very creative to get their attention with the messaging you put in front of them. Part of that's being consistent, is knowing they're not going to hear it one time and remember everything you communicated in that messaging. Part of that is communicating in different platforms, communicating on social media and via email and from the pulpit. I think that, and so it really is consistency of communication. Opportunity, though, it's about and what's possible with data solutions is being able to communicate to people what's important to them. And so this is where the pulpit is probably announcements for everyone, or church service. But the reality is not everyone needs to know about your next women's gathering or your next single moms event.
Right.
All of your single moms need to know. So how do you make sure that you communicate to the single moms? So how do you communicate to the parents of teenagers those announcements that somebody whose kids are graduated, they don't need to know about what's happening with the teenagers? And maybe you celebrate, here's what God's doing in our youth ministry. We want to celebrate God's work to everyone, but they don't necessarily need to know about all the announcements. So not everything is important to everyone. And so being able to prioritize your communication, create systems for communication, and then use your platforms in different ways is the key. But I think where churches miss it in communication is they communicate everything to everyone, and everyone tunes out, and they don't know what's the most important thing.
Yeah, so they all need text communication, basically, is what we just said here.
I think as you get practical, though, is people often, and I hear this from church leaders, of I don't want to get into SMS because that's just annoying when people start sending me SMS messages. The reality is, I think it's a 97% open rate on SMS messages.
I look at every one of my text messages. Like, it doesn't, anybody with a phone, like, just doesn't let those go by. You somehow look at them.
I have 21,747 unread, I just popped to 21,748 unread emails, but I only have 6 unread text messages, and they came in since we started this call.
Right.
Because the first thing I'm going to do after this call is check those text messages. Yeah. And that's not a new technology. It's what we do. So, but if somebody starts texting me every single announcement if like at Hillsong, started texting me every single announcement for every single ministry at Hillsong Church, I would unsubscribe so fast.
Right.
But if they send me the things that are relevant to me, like the Rise business community or, men's gatherings, it's got my attention every single time. And so the better we can communicate, use a tool, efficiently, but maximize those tools and then post it on social media and promote that to just men, or post it on to an email list of just men and using your database. So you pull a list out of that. So there are different systems. And then at the end of the day, using those pulpit announcements wisely, because there's still no one, at Hillsong Church where I go, I'm listening to Carl more than I'm listening to anyone else, so Carl says it's important, but he's saying it because what he talks about is for everyone. So you got to be systematic with your communication.
Yeah, church announcements are the abyss, man. Like we eventually, everyone wants an announcement. It's like they think their thing is more important, but we used to classify things as a 1, 2, or a 3 as far as an event. Yes. And 1s would get the announcement for sure, 2s maybe, and 3s probably didn't get it because we were too busy.
Right.
Yeah, and it's tough because you need it. And I think what a church will often do is they'll just quit. The pastor will quit doing church announcements because he's tired of the politics and everybody politicking for their event.
It's true.
Because people do know that is probably the most valuable promotional opportunity that you can get. But when then you put everything into it, and announce everything from that platform, then people tune out, and it's irrelevant.
10 minutes.
Yeah,
Of
you got to
announcements.
balance it. It's a tough balance.
Yeah.
Well, I feel
Very
like we've
cool.
talked about a lot of techie, communication-y things. We haven't touched on giving too much. Maybe Nils, what are your thoughts on just where church giving is headed, or any tech that you're seeing in that part of the world? Just, thoughts from your perspective.
I think, and I'm sitting in a different seat today than I was 2.5 years ago, and the decade before that. I remember the tension of being a pastor and not wanting to talk about giving. And now I'm sitting on the side of I work for a company that is a marketing, communication, and fundraising agency.
Right.
We talk about giving. And I think sometimes in the church, we will feel like, well, it's different giving, because in a nonprofit, it's, kind of, you choose which nonprofit you give to. And in the church, people are just supposed to tithe, and they give 10% to the church, and it's just what it is. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest mistake, and this is not a technology thing at all, the biggest mistake is we don't talk about giving enough. Now I said it enough. That's a broad statement.
Yeah.
Now some churches maybe do push that too far.
They're good at it, yeah, or maybe too much, yeah.
Our churches aren't communicating with enough. I mean, this is discipleship. This is an important thing to talk about, and it's important to talk about what your giving is accomplishing, what your giving is doing, the ministry impact that your giving is having. And so I think the biggest thing of when I think about the weekend experience, or even just churches in general, is use your email communication to talk about giving. Use your pulpit platform opportunity to talk about giving. Make it a part of your weekend worship experiences. And it's sometimes a little more awkward because there's not as much of a reason to pass the plates as there used to be. Right. At Community Bible Church, we did. We had the box in the back, and we had it there. But I think we need to incorporate it into our weekend worship experiences from a communication standpoint. We need to incorporate it into our regular communication channels. And a lot of times it's just kind of a tag on, oh, by the way, you can give. But having direct, real communication around it. And then I think the other side is the ease of giving. This is where it hurts me as a guy that cares a lot about technology. Is it is so easy today to have a good, easy giving experience, and yet we complicate so much with so many options and so many layers. And we'll often even say we don't want to give up the 3% transaction fees or whatever that might be. What you're giving up when you're not giving up those 3% transaction fees is way more than 3%. I can guarantee that.
Our numbers bear that out.
So I think creating a good, easy giving experience, and even in church. I mean, I see most people in church when they talk about it, is people pull out their phones and are giving right there on our phones.
Sure.
So, make that giving experience easy and functional. And then the other side, and one of the things I've learned at Dunman Company, is how important the thank you is. A lot of times we, as a pastor, will just say, well, that's just a part of church. We don't, it's weird. It feels weird to say thank you. Say thank you,
Absolutely.
It's an important, because you're allowing them to understand the impact of their gift. And in the church, people are going to give, or at least the goal is that they're giving in a recurring way, because they're committed to your church and the ongoing nature of the church. So it's a process of make it clear why somebody should give and what they're giving towards and the impact their giving's having. Have a great giving experience, a simple giving experience. Make it clear too how to give. Can they get through text message, through the mobile app? What are the opportunities? How do you do it in a very practical way? Your website though is can be very simple. It is not so complicated. Also, I mean, I think the other side is make recurring giving easy to set that up, and then say thank you after they give. And I think just having intentional process, and the reality is review that process quarterly, or monthly, and just say, how is our giving ask? How well are we communicating giving? How good is our giving experience? What are the trends? How well are we saying thank you? And just review that and continually get better at that, because you're never done. And your giving experience, as technology continues to change, can continue to get better. Just continue to work through those things. And I think we're seeing such progression of adoption of technology, which is exciting. But now we've got to move into that phase of how do we maximize that technology? Because just having it there but not having good messaging aligned to it it's a big miss.
Very good, man. Man, we could go on forever. You're a well of information, and I think we're so synced. You know, I mean, what you're saying is all the things we say just about on every podcast.
Yeah, totally.
That's pretty cool. Well, man, thanks, Nils. It's been super informative. And you know, having someone with your kind of background from the ministry side to the data side, I mean, it's just been a wealth of information. So super appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're gonna have to catch up soon.
Where should people go to check out the podcast? I feel like that would be a good next step for folks. The social media podcast.
So go to socialmedia.church is our website, and just search Social Media Church on Apple Podcast or Stitcher or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, very cool.
Genius. Love it. Awesome, man. Okay, Frank, so we've got a couple cool things happening next week on the show. Some guests.
We do. Who is here next week?
I see Brad and Drew Forsma.
Yep.
From Everyday Generosity.
That's right. Authors of Everyday Generosity is going to be a good show. I know Jesse lined those up. And anyone who wrote a book on generosity clearly thinks about it a ton. So
like we do.
Yep. So it's going to be fun to talk to them.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. Hey, great show today. Really lots of info there. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Yep. And we're going to be back next week. Same bat time, bat channel. So it's going to be awesome. God bless. Have a great week.
Thanks, y'all. See ya.